I'm Arya Schwartz alongside Rachel Galligan, and welcome to the Winsidr Show, where it's all about the W. Let's talk playoffs. Round 1, Game 1 is in the books, and we have much to discuss, so let's get right into it. If you like our show, please consider joining our Patreon community, patreon.com/Winsidr. For less than a cup of coffee a month, you can directly show support for the hard work we do covering the W. And don't forget to see our amazing staff's written content over at winsidr.com. That's winsidr.com. Welcome back to the show. Excited to be here with my co-host, the great Rachel Galligan. We're talking WNBA playoffs. We're one game in. And I'm not sitting here just trying to take a victory lap or anything, Rachel, but it's kind of a case of it is what we thought it would be as we expected. There was points in the game where in the games that we were texting each other and we're like, whoa, this is a little bit surprising. And then everything equaled out. Let's go one by one, but initial thoughts on the full slate of 4 games for WNBA Sunday.
Everything we predicted, I think, headed into the first game. There were really no surprises. A lot of blowouts. As we get into it, I'll share some, a little bit more of my thoughts. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. It definitely wasn't the most wild WNBA playoff Sunday that we've had. So, but it's the first round and there's still 8 teams. So I definitely anticipate today, depending on whenever this drops, Tuesday, to be a little more interesting.
Yeah, and I would love to talk to some players, probably off record would be best, just to get a sense of how their mindset coming into the playoffs, players, coaches, agents, everyone in the W sphere, how their mindset has changed with the change of format, no longer having, I know regular season play has been impacted because it used to be so important to be a top 2 seed. You get that double bye. It was amazing. But obviously the format change impacts how you coach game 1 of the playoffs, how you prepare for the playoffs, and so many more things. We could dive into that after the season. But game 1, Atlanta, New York, reminding people regular season, New York goes 3-0, and then last game of the regular season, Atlanta wins. So that regular season record is 3-1 New York. The Dream 69 in game 1, Liberty 83, full on domination. I mean, like at one point, it was for most of the fourth quarter, I felt like that the Dream sat their starters. Maybe I'm off on minutes just a little bit, but that's what it felt like. And it felt like, it was almost a message from Tanisha Wright that, hey, look at how the effort, the style, the grit, the tenacity that our bench players are playing with. I'm losing words right now. If you're not going to play with that, you're not going to play. Ryan Howard obviously struggled. The Liberty found ways to do whatever they wanted at times. Fibic goes off for, 20 points in the first quarter, first half.
21 total.
Just a wild game in terms of it wasn't the end result was what we expected, but the equation for New York wasn't exactly what we were expecting in some ways. They did do a new lineup also, which I thought was interesting. Rachel, give me your reaction. Dream Liberty game 1, Liberty take it.
Yeah, I mean, no surprise. They should take it. They took control of the games from the start and it really never looked back. Yeah, I mean, and I think it's interesting, Fibic kind of being switched out of the lineup with Vandersloot, fascinating there. But you know what? Like, that's the thing about this New York team is we talk about Brianna Stewart, we talk about Jonquel Jones, we talk about Sabrina Ionescu, but there are so many more weapons on this team. And so many players that they don't have to carry this burden of, filling these specific stat stuffing roles. They don't have to go do those things, but depending on the matchup, that's the beauty of New York is they can go out and mix up a lineup depending on the matchup, depending on who they're playing. Their depth in their backcourt is tough. And Fibic has been phenomenal all year long. Anybody who's watched this team as a rookie, just the confidence that she plays with now. I understand she's an older rookie, but what a great addition to this team. But in terms of the actual game itself, I mean, I'll be honest, it's exactly what I expected. It really wasn't much of a game. I think in the fourth quarter, that was the only quarter where Atlanta outscored New York. But at that point, you're resting players and, you're playing the long game here. So, I mean, it's exactly what should have happened. I think New York had an opportunity to mix some things up, play with some different rotations, play really, really establish some minute restrictions, even though it wasn't so blatantly obvious. Nobody had to play super crazy heavy minutes, which is always a huge asset, especially this early in the playoffs.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, look, you look
I
at.
don't really know what else to say.
Yeah. New York's just a better team. Like they're in a different league. Atlanta is not on the same tier. They're not in the same league. They can try and get some positives out of it. But as we said in our last episode, it almost feels like this Atlanta Dream season was a disappointment in the sense of they added talent, and it doesn't seem like they truly took that step forward. Maybe I'm being out of pocket. Maybe I'm being a little quick to judge. That's just my take on it. It seems like they beat the teams they should beat, and they were nowhere near against the teams that were competitors or contenders. So, yeah, I mean, okay, game 2 is coming up soon. What can Atlanta do? It definitely feels like it's just a matter of 40 minutes. But, hey, that's why we play the game, because anything can happen. Maybe Atlanta can steal one and force a game 3. Moving on to the next series, Indiana, Connecticut. Again, regular season, the Sun took it 3-1 over the Fever. Game 1, the Sun take it mightily, 93-69 over the Fever. The first half seemed like the Fever were going to keep up with the Sun.
Right.
It seemed like at times. And then it was just too much. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of attention. There has been a lot of attention about Caitlin Clark's struggles in the game. In general, I mean, you and I, we were texting about this. You can't have Kelsey Mitchell and Caitlin Clark go 4 for 23 from the 3-point line.
Right.
That is just not sustainable for anything positive to happen. Nalissa Smith needs to provide more on the offensive front, right? Like Kelsey Mitchell's still able to get 21 points, but to go 2 for 10 from 3 is not going to do it. Lexi Hull, who's been huge for them, goes 1 for 4 and 0 for 2. And then on the flip side, we have to talk about it, Rachel. Alyssa Thomas, the triple-double queen, gets her 4th or 5th triple-double. I'm blanking now. I feel like it's 5th.
4th in the playoffs, I believe.
4th in the playoffs, like 15th or maybe 16th in general. It's just ridiculous at this point.
That many now?
I mean, yeah, it's getting up there. I'm pretty sure the last one was 14. So I think that would make this one 15. If they want to combine playoffs, non-playoffs, whatever. I don't know how that goes. But Dwana Bonner adds in 22 points. Carrington with 14. And Marina Mabry. Yeah, well, saving that one. Marina Mabry sets the record for most points off the bench with 27. Shoots not 5 for 12. She herself, in shooting less threes than Caitlin Clark, provided more of a 3-point punch than Kelsey Mitchell, Lexi Hull, and Caitlin Clark combined. Rachel, what's going down with the Connecticut Sun versus the Indiana Fever? Because I know you got some thoughts.
I mean, the Connecticut Sun are one of the most experienced playoff teams in the league right now. I mean, from top to bottom, this is a team that just individually, you've got a lot of players who've been in the playoffs, but collectively as a group, at its core, they've been in the playoffs. They know how to win in playoffs. They know what this environment is going to entail. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you have the Indiana Fever, who there's not a single soul on that franchise. And matter of fact, the last time the Fever were in the playoffs, all of them were like teenagers. So like, it's not even close in my mind of like, and I said this to you before, like the Fever have nothing to lose. Like I'm not trying to take a victory lap for the Indiana Fever because, okay, you made the playoffs, but in the grand scheme of the process of building a tradition of winning culture in your franchise, this was a big step this year. You end up winning 20 games, you get to the playoffs for the first time in 8 years. Kelsey Mitchell, who has been the cornerstone of this franchise for 7 years now, literally has no playoff experience. And so it's just interesting to me it was interesting to watch it. I think the Fever came out, and I felt like, and I kind of felt like it could be kept close. But maybe game 2 is where that kind of rears its head a little bit more, right? Because it feels like the moment, that first moment, being out there and almost kind of running out of gas a little bit. I mean, whether there's nervous jitters or whatever, you just saw it in the way the Fever were shooting the basketball. Caitlin Clark in particular, Lexi Hull, who was shooting 68% from the 3-point line, goes 0 for 2. I mean, their best offensive weapon, their most consistent offensive weapon, was being able to establish Aaliyah Boston in the paint. She only had 14 shot attempts. So, I mean, your two-headed monster of Kelsey Mitchell and Caitlin Clark, combines for 4 of 23, like you said. Like, that's rough. That's a lot of empty possessions. And a team like Connecticut that just will wear you down. They're going to wear you down with what they do defensively. And in my opinion, the best thing that they did was putting DeWanna Bonner and her length on Caitlin Clark. That was a different adjustment. That was something new that we hadn't seen. I think you saw it out of the gate. The length of Bonner caused so many frustrations. And honestly, and you could just look at so many instances in that game where just Connecticut's defense was stifling, whether it was down low on the block and Bree Jones, some of the blocks and rejections by Carrington. Like, if you don't come in there and expect physicality, and if you don't go in there and you're ready to pop that ball, move the ball, like, be prepared for a hostile environment, like, Fever just seemed very, I don't know, they weren't rattled, but they definitely, it felt like a shock. The moment felt like a shock. And I think that maybe not initially, but just through the course of the game, it just wore them down. And you get to that fourth quarter and Connecticut just absolutely blitzed them 25-12. And it was relatively close. Like, I think it was like a 7 or 8 point game at halftime. And then it just slowly, kind of distanced. And next thing you know, the fourth quarter, okay, it's a blowout. There's nothing left. I think it'll be different going into game 2, just having a little bit of a taste of that environment, and, Caitlin Clark and, just some of the Kelsey Mitchell, Lexi Hull, tasting that environment, being able to kind of settle in a little bit more and having just an idea of what to expect. I expect the Fever to look a little bit better offensively in game 2.
Yeah, I'm totally with you on that one. I think you have to understand that the only experience you can get is actually playing. Exactly. And I'm sure there's been a billion articles written about this because people love to write about, Caitlin Clark. But the comparison of the early season Indiana Fever to how they quickly grew throughout the season, this is a very, very condensed season. The playoffs are. Now is the time where you need to flip that switch and learn from last game and try and get better for next game. I'm not saying that you can, change your identity, make something completely different, all of a sudden become an elite defensive team.
Yeah, but playoff basketball is different. It's just different. The stakes are higher. The calls mean more. I mean, everything's on the line. And so, but that being said, I don't sit back and feel disappointed. Oh man, Indiana is really, shit the bed, pardon my language, but I kind of expected them to some degree. You know what I'm saying? Like, okay, yeah. Connecticut should have done what they did yesterday, in my opinion. Now, what's going to be interesting is, can the Fever steal a game? Obviously, the back is against the wall, trying not to be swept. How do they come out and respond to game 1? Do they have enough to steal a win? I think they do, but at the same time, I'm not going to be super surprised if they're swept either.
I think they have the ability. It comes down to, are they going to produce? It's right. Truly that simple. Obviously we love to oversimplify things, but they have the ability. We've seen it. They have the ability to beat them. It's can they show up at the moment and be consistent? Right. The next game of the day, of the night, was Phoenix Mercury, Minnesota Lynx. Reminder: Minnesota took it 3-1. Quite interesting. I just realized. Clearly, I've been paying much attention. All of the higher seeded teams had the 3-1 regular season advantage. Didn't realize that till just now. But in game 1, Lynx win 102-95 versus the Mercury. It was a blowout at times, 23-point lead for the Lynx, but then the Mercury make the raging comeback. We talked about this, Rachel, in our last episode, kind of getting that it's almost like the smelling salts when a football player gets knocked out and then they do the smelling salts and they get like jolted back. Using the Diana Taurasi magic smelling salts you get what I mean, to kind of guide this team to a chance to win. Would it be enough? I said, and I feel kind of vindicated, so I'm going to take this victory lap, that I think they're going to have that, but it's not going to be enough. I think they're going to ride that wave for a quarter or two, but it won't be enough to overcome the deficit versus the Lynx. And that proved true, even though they did get the lead at one point, but were unable to expand it and hold it. Thoughts on the Minnesota Lynx taking game one, Nafisa Collier dropping a very franchise record? No, it ties Maya Moore for most points, 38-point plus game, whatever, in playoffs. Go.
I mean, I think obviously Nafisa Collier was phenomenal. 38 points. I mean, just it's unbelievable how good she is. I don't think that there's a stat out there that we can like measure the metric of like how good she is and how much she brings to this team. I mean, you can't, yeah, we can look at numbers. Yeah, we can look at, analytics, but like, I just think that we're grossly underestimating her impact. And that's saying a lot because everybody knows how good she is and she is the, the face of this franchise. I was interested, a little bit of a flat start for Minnesota coming out of the third quarter.
Which is not the case this season at all.
Yeah. I was a little bit surprised. But, I kept telling, I was watching with a couple of my neighbor friends, and I kept saying like, Phoenix is crazy enough that they're good, because they were like, oh, it's another blowout, man. What's going on? And I'm like, okay, well, this team, Phoenix, is crazy enough that like they might just knock down some shots and like find their way back into this game. And then it happened, and I'm like, look, I freaking told you. Like they just, I'd feel like Minnesota, instead of like stomping on the jugular, just kind of let up a little bit. Which I mean, look at the score. I mean, Minnesota cannot be happy with the fact that they gave up 95 points. You know what I'm saying? I'm sure that's something that was talked about after this game. And just defensively, we know how good Minnesota is. This is one of the best defensive teams, second in the league in terms of their discipline and how good they were. And it was that third quarter. Phoenix outscored Minnesota 27-21. And so, Phoenix, on the other hand, I mean, I don't know. I don't know this team's identity. I don't know if they know their identity. I don't know how close this team is. At this point, the biggest question is just going to be, can they find a way to possibly steal a game and take it back to Phoenix for Taurasi, or is this going to be her last game? Like that, because there's no way they're winning this series. There's absolutely no way they're getting out of this series. Taurasi either has one or two games left if this is it thing is true. Minnesota, especially, I think that they're going to be challenging themselves individually and collectively, really, for just that defensive performance. They can't be happy with that.
Oh, they're going to be pissed. I mean, letting Natasha Cloud run a 14 of 23 for 33 points, ridiculous. Clea Copper, and honestly, if I'm looking at this from a historical and Cheryl Reeve perspective, I have my frustrations, I have my anger. You never want to let up 33 points to anyone, but you have to also know that the games where Natasha Cloud is going off are the games that Phoenix doesn't win. So for Phoenix to be competing to win, and obviously, yes, it was closer than you'd like, and I was almost wrong in that statement. It would sound ridiculous if Phoenix won. Shout out to Diana Taurasi with 21 points. But if Clea Copper, the engine that makes this team go, only has 16, 6 of 15, 2 for 5 from the 3-point line, and doesn't really get going, only has 3 assists, only 4 rebounds, containing Clea Copper is kind of the way that you can say, hey, other people are going to get theirs on ours, but they're not going to win unless Ka is really getting in her motion, really flowing with this offense. And to me, at least, I think you can hang your hat on that. But yeah, I mean, you have to think coming out of this next game, both teams are motivated. Phoenix has is this Diana Taurasi's last game? Right. And Minnesota, which I think is going to come out with guns blazing, is going to come out pissed. They are going to be upset at letting up this amount of points, abysmal third quarter from their perspective. And also, one of the best quotes, I got to say it, Nafisa Collier in the post-game press conference getting asked, and kind of jokingly with a little smile says, well, I hope next game will be will be sending Diana Taurasi packing, which I thought was funny.
Yeah.
Sorry, you want to say something?
No, I just want to, 20 points over their average. Minnesota to give up 95. They're second in the league, give up just 75. So really interesting, just kind of how that. But I think you have to credit the Phoenix Mercury, and you have to credit the experience on that Phoenix Mercury roster. And the greatest player of all time, arguably the greatest player of all time, Diana Taurasi, is still on that roster. And she found a way to knock down perimeter shots and, keep this game relatively, reasonable between her and Natasha Cloud combining for 54. What was it? So yeah. You have to expect that from one of the greatest of all time. And you have to expect that from multiple WNBA champions on the Mercury. They're not going to just roll over. Phoenix, the Lynx are going to have to go take this. There's no doubt about that. But just toe to toe, like the Lynx are just a better complete basketball team on both ends of the ball. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see with the storylines of, Phoenix with their back against the wall, end of the Taurasi era. How do they come out? And, Minnesota, how do they come out responding with the potential to end that? To be the last game she's ever played and, advance in the playoffs, get rest, and also just be better defensively. I can't imagine they're happy with that. So who wins out?
And Rachel, Cheryl Reeve wants to be the coach who beat Diana Taurasi in her last game. It's so bad. In the last game of the night, Seattle takes on Vegas. The Aces again had the 3-1 lead over the Storm of the regular season. That game, we got thoughts, Rachel. Final score 78-67. But honestly, the real part we have to talk about is the fourth quarter. And I thought at halftime, when we were doing this pod, we were going to be talking about the 9-point first quarter, the lowest scoring quarter by the Aces. I thought that's what we were going to be talking about. But then somehow, some way, Seattle says, hold my beer, Las Vegas. Hold my beer. And drops a twoer. A 2-point fourth quarter. Did not hit a single shot in the fourth quarter. It was two free throws. By the way, shout out to Seattle Storm going 100% from the free throw line in that game. Rachel, where do we start?
It was a great game. It was by far the most entertaining game of the day.
Definitely.
For 30 minutes. It was okay, here we go. We have like a playoff basketball game now. It's not going to be just like this, we kind of know what's going to happen, and it's kind of getting out of hand. And I want to give a little bit of credit to Phoenix and Minnesota. It got a little bit interesting at the end of that game. I don't want to completely forget about them, but this was by far the game of the day in terms of star power, toe to toe, what's going to happen. And then it was it just poof. I cannot believe what I witnessed in that fourth quarter out of the Seattle Storm. And credit the Las Vegas Aces. This was not a great game for the Aces. A'ja Wilson struggled early in the game, was able to get it going there in that third quarter, really, really started to take over. And that third quarter proved pivotal for Vegas to kind of just, again, find that momentum top to bottom. Jackie Young struggled 5 of 13. Huge story. Kelsey Plum struggled the most. 1 of 8 from the floor, 0 for 4 from the 3-point line, finished with just 2 points. So you tell me that Jackie Young and Kelsey Plum are going to combine for 14 points in this game. And I'm thinking, damn, Seattle's got this game. Seattle's going to take that game. If the 3-headed monster, if some want to call it 4 or 3, whatever you want, that for the sake of this, that's what I'm going to call it. Kelsey Plum and Jackie Young, because a lot of this season it felt like Chelsea Gray has not been 100%. I'm going to get to her in a minute. Only combined for 14 points, and they still found a way to win. And that's what it was. It was Las Vegas being able to find a way to win. It's being able to throw the ball down to A'ja Wilson in the second half and have her go to work and take over in the moment. That's what she did. It's Chelsea Gray. 5 of 10 from the field, started hitting shots, doing the shimmy. She's starting to feel herself a little bit. She's been trending in the right direction. She finishes with 16. Tiffany Hayes, monster game, monster minutes. Exactly what Tiffany Hayes had to do. She was the X factor in that game. If Tiffany Hayes does not do what she did, Las Vegas, being able to step up when Jackie Young and Plum, are greatly struggling, to be able to have someone like that, a veteran who can step up. So it wasn't like Vegas played great, but they found a way. Missed opportunity by Seattle, unbelievably. And I think it deserves a lot of criticism because it's not like this team isn't experienced in this moment. They had a chance. They had Vegas on the ropes. This was the game they had to steal. And then you come out in the fourth quarter. There's no adjustments. There's no timeouts. There's nothing in terms of, okay, making a different decision on how Vegas was guarding you. Everyone's like, oh man, this is just a credit for how good Vegas defense is. Yes, they were defending really well. They were starting to do better offensively. But we are professional basketball players in the WNBA. You can find a way to manufacture points, and Seattle did not do that. They looked stunned. They looked dazed. They looked confused. They have no identity. They don't know who's supposed to go take the shot. Jewel Lloyd's on the bench. I mean, it was like, I couldn't believe it, especially with how well they had, kind of played earlier in that game and keeping it close.
Oh, Rachel, you cannot manufacture shots and you have a Nneka Ogwumike MVP. You can't manufacture shots and you have a Gabby Williams. You have a Skylar Diggins-Smith. You have a Jordan Horston. So, there was so many questions. Look, I have had my concerns and issues with Noelle Quinn as the head coach of the Seattle Storm pretty publicly for a while now. But I know when to sit down and say, hey, she's been doing better. I was, arguing within myself over my feelings. And I watched this game and I'm just banging my head against the wall. What is going on? What are you doing? Take a timeout, draw something up, try something different. There seemed to be and this isn't necessarily on her, this is on the team as a whole. There seemed to be a lack of leadership in, what would you say?
No, I was just going to say a lack of urgency. I mean, everyone's like,
urgency. Yes. Yeah.
There
was a lack of urgency.
Like, it's game one of the playoffs. You can't lack urgency. You can't lack fire. I don't even know how that's possible. You know what I'm saying? Like, this isn't just a random game in the middle of July. Like, this is the game one of the playoffs. There should not be any reason to lack urgency. And obviously you saw it with Vegas. They were going to find a way. They were going to dig deep. Seattle did not do that. And it just felt collectively like, just what are we doing? Like, what are we doing? And everyone looking around at one another. It was so strange to me. And the strangest part, more than just the 2 points and how do you not find a way to make a field goal, was just how do you not have that burning fire? Like, where was that? Where was that out of Seattle? That was the most disturbing part, because if you don't have it in the playoffs, you're never going to have it. It's over.
I mean, I was going to talk about direction because it seemed like there was almost a lack of leadership and direction in that whole fourth quarter, that whole second half, honestly. But I like what you said about that fire and urgency, because now thinking back the whole season with the Aces, when they struggled, they always played with a fire and urgency, right? Mm-hmm. Like, even when things weren't working out, they were still playing with that up-tempo, urgent flow.
Even when they lost, right?
Yeah. And even when Kelsey Plum gets the ball and she puts it up in her normal motion, but it misses, there's still that same sense of urgency and flame and fire, and the Seattle Storm lacked it in game one. And I have to think back to a series when Seattle almost lost to game one and then go on, I believe, if I remember correctly, in the bubble to win it all against Minnesota. Minnesota, the underdog in that series, had a chance to take game one in Seattle. They, lack of better term, screw the pooch. And Seattle ends up sweeping it. I have to be looking at that when I think about this series, game two. That seemed like a pivotal moment that we're going to look back on and be like, if you would have taken that game one, which was in your hand, right, then things could have gone mightily different. I want to give a shout out to some elite basketball minds. Matt Cohen, his hot take of the playoffs going in was that Seattle will take it because Vegas is at their weakest in round one. Thought about it at first, thought he was crazy. Thought about it more, thought he's a genius. Somewhere in between. Rachel, which game are you looking most forward to? Which game two? And is there a series you think pushes to three?
That's a good question. We've got Atlanta and New York. I think that'll be a sweep. I wish I had my piece of paper where I wrote down kind of what our predictions were. I don't see Atlanta being able to beat New York on Tuesday. I think New York will take care of business. I think Seattle and Las Vegas, I mean, this is the defending 2-time WNBA champions, and the greatest player in the world's on this team. And I just don't believe that what I saw from Seattle is going to all of a sudden flip a switch and translate into a win. I don't think that you're going to have Jackie Young and Kelsey Plum combining for 14 points again. I feel like after what I witnessed last night, Las Vegas is going to sweep Seattle. But obviously that one's intriguing because from the star power and the talent standpoint of Seattle, like, how do they respond? Can they respond? Is it just like, I don't know. That's interesting. That I would say that one on Tuesday is the most interesting one to me. My new prediction is Vegas will sweep that one. And then Indiana, Connecticut. I'm still fascinated with this series, but like overall, and I kept telling myself last night or yesterday, whatever, like this really does show that top 4 parity in the league. You know, like the best teams are taking care of business, and they should continue to take care of business again. But, you know, it's playoffs. You never know. I still think Fever could respond. I think that they could get hot and offensively be so much better than what they were. They may be able to steal a game. I would love that just for the sake of being able to watch this matchup a little bit longer. And Phoenix, Minnesota, I don't know. I think Wednesday night might be the night where we have the biggest chance of somebody pushing to a game 3. What do you think?
When it comes to game 3, I'm sticking with my playoffs prediction that the Indiana Fever are the only team that can push 3 and the only team that can upset. I just see it. I think, you know, Seattle's obviously going to come out with some fire, but I think they're deflated. I don't want to say embarrassed, but they're definitely, you know, tail between their legs a little bit. Atlanta, I don't see a way.
No.
And honestly, the thing that is making me, for my last question, before we did our last episode, we did a finals prediction pre-playoffs. You said New York in 5. I said Minnesota in 4. Something that is making me lean more towards your take on this is how handily New York is handling Atlanta. Granted, obviously, they're the worst team in the playoffs, so that would track. Rachel, are you going to double down on New York in 5, or do you want to change? It's like, let's make a deal.
It's so funny. I forgot who Ivan predicted was going to win. I told you I was like a leaf in the wind, just blowing back and forth. Because I still feel like this weird feeling that we're going to witness a Las Vegas three-peat. But you know what? For the sake of it, yes, I'll double down. I'll go ahead and say New York in 5. Let me just stay consistent. Let me not change my mind. At some point, you just got to pick something, and you just got to go with it.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with Minnesota. Even though, yeah, I agree. My mind, I don't know. It's this.
It just feels like there's going to be a letdown, right? Like,
yeah.
That's the first time I've said that out loud. But
yeah,
I don't know what it'll be because, but I don't know.
Yeah, because we almost look at them as, I don't know. We've never seen a team like the Lynx that was so much built around one player, right? We look at the Vegas. Yes, Vegas is built around Asia Wilson, but they have these other superstars that were reaching crazy heights. So, hey, maybe this is Minnesota's ascending to that level. I don't know. Yeah, I guess I'm going to have to stick with Minnesota in 4. Probably after the first round, I'll switch it. Who knows? All right, Rachel, who's your GOAT?
Well, just staying on brand here. Diana Taurasi. Let's just stay on brand. Let's give her some flowers. Very possible she's got one more game left. I secretly hope Phoenix can just start like going crazy and just they knock down like, 19 23s and they find a way to send her back to Phoenix one more time. I would love to have that series pushed to a 3. I don't think it'll happen. I would love to, but regardless of what you think or whatever, greatness is playing. Greatness is going to be playing at least for one more game. So I'm going to give Diana Taurasi her flowers.
Simone's the GOAT.